It's time to get real. Real situations and real solutions. It's time for Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Inspiring healthy communication, building strong connections, and helping you grow in love, one conversation at a time. Right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN, each Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Here's Dr. Linda Bing.
Hey, good evening, family and friends, and welcome to another episode of Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Come on in, have a seat, put your feet up, and get ready for some real talk. Just in case this is your first time tuning in, let me just tell you that I am Dr. Linda Bing. And the reason I bring this show to you is I do have some expertise in psychology. I'm a certified relationship specialist, certified life coach, and I want to create a safe space where we could come together and talk about real life situations. Doesn't matter whether you're single or married, we have something in the conversation for everyone. So your calls are welcome, your comments are welcome. If you don't want to be heard on air, then by all means, send me a text message and get in on the conversation. If you think about topics that you'd like to have addressed in the future, please feel free to share them as well. So tonight we're going to jump right in. I am going to put marriage and married couples front and center this evening. And even though I'm focusing on married folks tonight, if you are single, there's always something you can pick up. Even if you never intend to get married, there's something you can pick up from the conversation that will help you in your relationship. So many times I hear, not people say it directly, but you get the sentiment of people feel like once they get married, they can kind of sigh, relax, rest, because it's almost like the job is done. I've won the prize. And that is not the case at all. In fact, some people might tell you that you actually have more work to do after you get married. I don't know if it's more, but it probably is not less. What we need to focus on is the fact that whatever it took to get her or to get him, you have to continue to do those things throughout the relationship. And many times that includes dating. So the first topic we're going to talk about tonight is married couples dating. Is it date night or is it duty night? Do you go out on dates because you still feel the love and the spark and the excitement, or has it become another chore? Is it just one more thing to put on your to-do list? Hopefully that's not the case, but if it is, we have some things that can help turn that around for you. And then in the second hour, we're going to shift topics like we normally do, and we're going to talk about those little things that she does or those little things that he does that just for whatever reason, they mushroom, they explode into major arguments. We want to talk about that too, because why is it that there are so many little things that turn into big arguments? So get in on the conversation. The numbers are on the screen. It's 412-213-8995. And if you wish to text instead of call, 412-218-3888. So if you're ready, let's go. I want to give you a little background on dating. Let's set the scene and get the context going. So dating dates back over a century, okay? It goes back to, actually it started out as being more of courtship. Before the 1900s, okay? People used to court, and you may even have heard some relatives, grandmother, great grandfather, somebody talk about courting. Courting was the kind of thing where it was done in, not publicly, but in the parlor of someone's home. And it was always supervised by an adult, someone older than the two people who were coming together. So we started out with this supervised process. Then we got to the 1920s and 1930s, and we saw the rise of things like there was the automobile, there was some forms of urban entertainment, like movie theaters and shows that people could go to. So then they started leaving the parlor and going out in public on what they called dates. Then we move into like World War II suburbia, and the date night became a staple for young people in the 40s and the 50s. Because again, once you got into suburbia, you were not as close to some of the theaters, et cetera. So you found other things to do, to go to the park, to go for walks, get something to eat, et cetera. This might be a different flow in other parts of the world, but that's basically how it has evolved here. And we started out with very strict guidelines. I mean, there were guardrails for who you could court, how you can court, what the appropriate hours for courtship and appropriate days happen to be. And we've progressed to something that's a lot more flexible and relaxed. But dating still serves a lot of the same purpose. It's a process to identify fit. Is this person good for me? And even though we get married to someone, we have to maintain the fit. So think of it like exercising or going to the gym. If you go to the gym, you work out hard, maybe you even have a trainer, you get the musculature that you want, now you're nice and toned and fit, you might be able to ease up a little bit. But if you just completely stop, over time, your body goes back to a less toned and less fit state. And so when we're talking about relationships, we have to keep working out. We have to keep exercising, doing the things that we did in the beginning in the dating process so that the marriage stays fit, so that we don't lose anything that we've gained in the process. So think back to some of the direct promises and the indirect promises that you may have made in that dating process. And now it's time to pay up. You cannot slack off. You want to keep the spark going. And so what we want to talk about tonight is how that's working out. Are people still going on date nights? Is it something that you enjoy? Is it something that feels like a chore? And so I want to start out, give you some information about married couples, how you define married couples. In fact, some people acknowledge common law marriage. There are states that acknowledge common law marriage. Some people will talk about folks as, not my spouse, but my partner. So there's differentiation. But when we're talking about a married couple's date night, I'm talking about it as a scheduled and intentional period of time where partners set aside their daily roles. So you put aside the fact that you're a parent or a roommate or an employee or whatever the case might be, and you focus exclusively on the romantic relationship. It often involves going out, but the core definition is defined by connection. So it's not the specific location or activity. So when I'm talking about date night, I'm not necessarily referring to, do you put on your clothes, get dressed up, and go out somewhere? I'm talking about, do you set aside some time so that you focus on the connection? Set aside the time where you've made an appointment, and you really ought to keep it like it's an appointment. So according to relationship experts and researchers, a true date night typically includes four things: intentionality, exclusivity, distraction-free focus, and novelty. I'll go back over that. You need to make sure you get these things. So it may not really be considered a date night if it's not scheduled and intentional in a set period of time. So with intentionality, it needs to be a pre-planned appointment, and you should hold that appointment just like you do any other appointment. You make time for things that are important to you. So there are situations where you have to go to the doctor, the dentist, the eye doctor, go get a haircut, go get, your hair done by your stylist, whatever the case might be. And so we make sure that we keep those appointments. We make sure that if we've set the appointment, it's on our calendar and nothing interferes with that appointment. And that's what we need to do when it comes to relationships and dating when you're married. So one is, as I said, it is intentionality. You have to make sure that you are intentional about what it is that you're doing, the time that you're setting aside for the relationship. And then we need to look at, hold on, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Hold on. Make sure we get this thing going right. Apologize for that. Sure, I'm not sure. Hopefully you're not having a problem on your end, but I am having a problem on my end. Let's make sure we get this back up and running appropriately. All right, I'm going to keep talking because I can't tell whether or not you're actually able to hear me right now or not, but I'm going to keep going as if you can so that we can make sure everything is copacetic. All right, so we mentioned intentionality. The second thing is exclusivity. We want to make sure from the standpoint of who we're spending time with. We want to make sure that people understand this is a one-on-one thing. It's not a time for group dating. It's not a time to get together with friends. And even though that's allowed, there's nothing wrong with doing that. That's not really the purpose of date night. That's not what we want you to do when you set aside this date night. We don't want you to be distracted by other people. So it's not a night out with the family. It's not a time to get together with friends. It's something that you're going to do one-on-one. And then we talk about it as being distraction free. We want to make sure that your focus is on one another. So again, it's not a time for you to come together and pull out the cell phone. You ever go to the restaurant sometimes and you see people who are um, sitting around at the table. It might be a couple at the table, but they're not looking at each other. They're not engaging with one another. They're looking at their phone screens. Or maybe they're in a restaurant like a sports bar or something that has television screens, television monitors around, and they're spending more time focused on the screen than they are on the person sitting across from the table. So when we talk about distraction-free focus, that's what the researchers and the experts are talking about. They're saying that you need to be encouraged to put those things away and actually have a discussion. And the discussion should not be about the logistics, about the business of running a family. It should be about things like how your day went, things that are of interest to you, maybe making plans for your next date, anything other than the kids, the bills, the finances. We don't want to talk about the business of marriage. And then lastly is novelty. And that's engaging in something new, some new activity. So maybe just going bowling. When's the last time you went bowling? When's the last time you went skating or bicycle riding or a picnic in the park? Do something that you don't typically do. Serves a lot of different purposes. One, for instance, is it gets the adrenaline flowing in a way that it's not normally flowing, because you're doing something new and exciting that you have not been doing before. And so many times once that adrenaline rush hits and the oxytocin gets into your system, into your bloodstream, it causes you to have good, happy, positive energy, which you can then take back home and continue on however you choose to do so. But we want to make sure that you're doing things that are new and exciting. And so there are people who spend lots of time researching subjects like this. There's a research done called the National Marriage Project. And what it did was look at the spark. What are things that help trigger the spark of early dating, and how are those things perpetuated throughout the relationship? So think about something out of the norm. Even though you might like going out to dinner or you like going to dinner and a movie, mix it up a little bit. Try something new. And even if it's not something that you normally would have thought to do, if it's something your partner wants to do, then, give it a try. If it doesn't work well, then okay, you don't have to do that again. But the whole idea is to find ways to maintain or bring back the joy. You should constantly want to be elevating in a relationship. You don't get to a level and just plateau. And if you feel like you've gotten to that plateau, then you definitely know it's time to amp up your dating game. So one of those researchers that I mentioned is a doctor by the name of John Gottman. Do you want to look up any of his work? It's Gottman, but he has done a lot. In fact, there's even a Gottman Institute, and he talks about the 3 R's of date night: reconnect, ritual, and romance. You want to reconnect on date night, and that's why there are those guidelines about intentionality and exclusivity and distraction-free focus and novelty, because we want to create a space where you can reconnect. So even if you don't leave home, if you stay at home, because I know, like in my situation, sometimes my husband and I go out, sometimes we just create the right atmosphere in the home. We're empty nesters, so we don't have to worry about, kids and those kinds of things, but you still want to get that right kind of ambiance. He's big on ambiance. And so it makes for a great experience. You should be able to have a great experience at home and not necessarily have to go out. So reconnect, that's what it's all about. Pull out your calendar, put it on the calendar if you need a reminder, but clear that time for one another. And then ritual. Gottman encourages couples to create rituals. What are some of your rituals? We tend to have holiday rituals. There are things that we might do every Thanksgiving or every Christmas. We've got Easter coming up. Some people plan what they're going to do, especially if they have young children. We understand that, you might still do the Easter egg hunts and kids might still believe in the Easter bunny and those kinds of things. So families have rituals, but what's a date night ritual? What's something that's a couple's ritual just for the two of you in your marriage? And so rituals are just repeated action. They become tradition. It's a way that you encounter one another in a very intentional way. And you create these shared memories, these shared meanings between spouses. So, date night is a type of ritual, or it could become one because it's a shared meaning and you're taking time to be with each other, step out of your daily life routine, and have a shared memory, a shared experience. As I was saying, the ritual doesn't have to be something major. One of our rituals, we like to watch movies, and we really like Turner Classic movies, the old black and whites, particularly like around in the 40s, the 40s and 50s, movies that go back to that era. So many times on a Friday night, we will, turn the lights low. If there's a if it's cold outside, there'll be a fire in the fireplace. We get comfortable, cuddle up, turn on the movies, and we're good. And that may sometimes be our date night. It's a ritual for us to get together. We also have rituals that are not as romantic. For example, because we're even on the days when we both work from home, because we're not together all day long, even if we're in the house. His office is upstairs, mine is downstairs. I work from home every day. He does not. There's some days he's in the hospital, some days he's at home. So one of our daily rituals is, and not too exciting, but it's ours. So we watch the local news together at 6. We then watch national news at 6:30. He's a Jeopardy fan. I could take it or leave it, but it's a ritual. It's something we do together. So if I'm by myself, I don't turn on Jeopardy. But if he and I are together, Jeopardy is on at 7. We find something at 7:30. Sometimes it's ET, Entertainment Tonight, or sometimes it might be HGTV if I've got the controls. It just depends. 8 o'clock, we'll start out usually watching something together, but he'll leave me after a while and go find somebody who's hitting, kicking, throwing, bouncing a ball somewhere. So our ritual, we know that we're going to connect 6 o'clock every evening, Monday through Friday. And that's a time to not only spend time, but check in on the day. Another ritual that we have is, and this started from back when children were young, that I don't remember the movie, but I know I got it from a movie where they would sit at the dinner table and everybody would tell their highs and lows. And so many times we'll do that. Now, that's not a scheduled ritual. That's not something that we do every day. But periodically, instead of just saying, how was your day, we'll ask one another, what was your high for the day? And it really makes you think. You have to stop and think about what all happened today and what was that experience that really made me feel good or that I'm proud of or that I'd like to repeat. What was a high for me? And we also talk about the low. And we don't stay there, but we do acknowledge it. It was a low. Okay, so we can do better tomorrow, that kind of thing. So that's what we're talking about with rituals. So Gottman says, okay, you need to reconnect. You need to have a ritual for your date night. And then, of course, romance is his third R. He says a good date night should rekindle your attraction and your passion for each other. And that's why if you're doing something that might be sensual in nature or something that gets the oxytocin running and the dopamine firing and all those good things going on, the feel good hormones in your system, it can take you back. Sometimes it's playing a game. It might be a certain food or a certain smell, whatever it is, but make sure that you bring the romance back, because without intentional time away from children, household chores, the job, all of those things, the romantic spark over time begins to fade. And there are many ways to keep the spark alive. It doesn't just have to be the date night ritual. So if you have a ritual, I'd love to hear about it. There are other people who maybe are struggling for something new and exciting to do. And even though it might seem, mundane to you, it could be brand new for someone else. So if you have a ritual, you can text it 412-218-3888, or you can call and tell us about it, 412-213-8995. So I'd love to know what date night means to you. Is it a connection? Is it romance? What do you do? Also want to talk to you a little bit about um, the research says that, and I'd like to, it's good for us to go off the cuff, but I think being grounded in some data makes a lot of sense as well. So research just does tell us that not all couples are into date night. There is appearing around maybe in the 2000s was when one of those national marriage projects began, and it was done through the University of Virginia. And one of the things they found out was that 52% of husbands and wives said that they never go out on date nights with their spouse. And I think that's just wrong. It's just wrong. 52%. That means over half of the married couples may go out occasionally, but they don't have regular date nights. They are not regularly pouring into one another and rekindling the spark. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that their marriage is bad. It doesn't mean that it's not healthy or that it's not happy. We just know that there are certain things you can do. Again, if you relate it back to, say, your body or illness, health. There are certain things, just like you may know people who smoked their whole lives, never got lung cancer. And then you may know somebody else who never smoked, but got lung cancer. So we can't always predict. And that's why I'm saying that the fact that they may not go out on date nights doesn't necessarily mean that their marriage is unhealthy. We just know the same way we know that you reduce the risk of lung cancer if you don't smoke. We know that you reduce the risk of growing apart and losing your spark for one another if you don't go out on date nights. So that means if 52% of married couples are not doing it, then 48% do have date nights. And the ones that say they have date nights talk about once or twice a month. I think that's a good rhythm. It doesn't mean that you can't get with your spouse and do things otherwise, but the other things, that's when you get together with couples, or you have a game night, or maybe you go to some social activity at a community center, a local lounge, your church, whatever the case might be. There are other things you can do, but to carve out that special one-on-one time, really they recommend at least once a month. And as I said, almost half of the population is doing it twice a month. Husbands and wives who have frequent dates, frequent date nights were significantly more likely to report being very happy in their marriages compared to those who did not go out on regular date nights. We can just get into a rut. And one of the things that date nights do is help you get out of that rut. Date night can be simple. It doesn't have to be expensive. As I said, it doesn't have to take place outside of the house. But if it does, go for a walk. It can be as simple as going for a walk. 83% of wives and 84% of husbands who had regular date nights were very happy in their marriages, compared to 68% of wives and 70% of husbands who did not have regular date nights. They said that they were not as happy in the marriage. So at least for the people surveyed by this National Marriage Project, we know that there was a significant difference in terms of the happiness of the people. And again, when you're not happy in your relationship, other things start to spiral because there are connections between your psychological health and your physical health. So if you're not happy in your home life, it could spill over into not being happy in your work life, your professional life. And the more unhappiness you feel, the more likely it is that you might develop some sort of physical ailment. Because as I said, those things are connected. So just think about it. When was the last time you went out on a date with your spouse based on the way we described it here? Based on that, when was the last time? So, it doesn't mean that he came to pick you up from the hair salon, drive you home, and the two of you were in the car with no kids around, not talking about bills or anything. That was not a date. Okay. That was not date night. Can't count that one. But think about, when was the last time you planned something, whether it's in the house or out of the house? Go for a walk. They can be spontaneous. They talk about them being scheduled as long as it's intentional. I don't even think it necessarily has to be scheduled. It can be spontaneous. Our date nights are not, yes, we do, for the most part, we do the Friday night thing, but when we go out on dates, unless it's something that we know we're going to catch a movie, and so you need to go at the time that it's in the theater, or if we're going to, a concert or something, we're going to a play, then of course you have to schedule those things. But many of our date nights are not something that's scheduled and pre-planned. Sometimes just on the spur of the moment. It can be as simple as going for a walk, sometimes in the evening when it's kind of cool outside. Go for a walk together. But you're walking You're together, you're connecting, and you're talking. That's what it's all about. So call and let us know. Are you going on date nights? Does it feel like a duty, like a chore, or does it feel like something that is fun and enjoyable? Do you and your spouse have date nights? And if not, why not? 412-213-8995 or text 412-218-3888. And if you're listening to this, if you're watching it on the replay, put it in the chat. Put it in the comment section because people do go back and view. They go back and listen later. And so it will still be interesting and informative for the person who goes back and looks at it later. So put it in the chat if you're not on with us live because it still serves a purpose. So, dating when you're married has slightly different goals than when a single person dates. When people who are single, they're dating trying to assess whether or not this is the right person. When you're married, hopefully you've already figured out this is my person. There will be some overlap, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, I have a text message that I need to respond to. There's a text from Daisy in Dallas, Texas. Hi, Daisy. Daisy says, I find that don't date nights with other couples are healthy as well, and it gives you something different to do. Yeah, date nights with other couples can be fun. It does give you something else to do, but again, it can still be a distraction because now you've got to focus not just on your spouse, but you're also focusing on that other couple. And you guys are talking about things that may be in common to both couples, and some of those may not be the things that you would talk about one-on-one with your spouse. So I believe in getting together with other couples. We have couples that we do life with too, but I would still say it's important to have that one-on-one time because you're going to reconnect stronger if it's just you and your spouse. You're building the ritual, and then there's the romance. And Gottman says those are the three R's that we need. There's going to be less romance if you're with another couple, and you're not one-on-one talking about some of the more personal, intimate things. You know, on these date nights, you could go back and talk about the remember whens, you know, and sometimes those things are okay to talk about with another couple, but you could be talking about stuff that means absolutely nothing to them, and it could potentially be boring. So yeah, keep going out. You know, if people are going out with other couples, keep doing that, but you still need to make sure that your person knows how special they are to you by you giving them your undivided attention. It goes a long way for people, particularly depending on what their love language happens to be. But it goes a long way for people to know that all of your attention is focused on me right now. And so that's what I would encourage. But I appreciate that, Daisy. Thank you for the text and hope others will follow suit as well. So in a moment, we're going to take a break. But before we do that, I just wanted to, again, go back and share that we're talking about date night or duty night. You know, is it something that you look forward to, helps your relationship grow, or does it feel like a drudgery? And I was highlighting the fact that there are differences in dating when you're single and when you're married. The purpose of dating is different. Once you're married, you're not going through a selection process to see if this is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. But in both of those situations, you know, if you're single and listening to this show, then you still need to think about those three R's, because if this is someone that you're considering doing life with on a permanent basis, you need to make sure that you are connecting. So it's not a reconnection in this case, but those three R's are still important. You want to make sure that you are connecting with this person, that it's a natural connection, not something that's forced, but that you're developing a bond. And even as dating couples, you can develop rituals. You can be a dating couple living in two separate places, but there can still be something special that the two of you share. So you still want to create those rituals. And then, of course, there needs to be some romance. You know, we've got to make sure that all the other things are important, but chemistry is important as well. So those three R's are applicable whether you're married or whether you're a single couple. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you've tried something different in the past. But right now, it is time for us to take a little bit of a break. Don't go far because we'll be back before you know it. This is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing, and we'll be right back on Pittsburgh's DSEN.
Pittsburgh, it's an old school party. Yes, each Saturday we throw it back with some of the best old school music, funk, R&B, old school, rap, hip hop, and all the jams that make you move and dance. Yes, check it out. Each Saturday, right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN, all the old school jams, 6 to 11 p.m.
Pittsburgh, have you seen our Sunday radio schedule? Ooh, it is lit. Start the day off with our Sunday gospel music from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It will inspire you and have you praising the Lord. Then from 3 to 8 p.m., we bring you Sunday jazz melody for all the jazz lovers. Then cap off the night with the Quiet Storm from 8 to 11 p.m. to hear the best smooth, romantic, and soulful R&B sounds of yesterday and today. All that each Sunday on Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Looking for a cost-effective way to help increase your company? Looking for a
All right, welcome back. Question for you. Do you and your spouse go out on dates? That's the subject tonight. This is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing, and we're talking about date night, the importance of going out on dates as a married couple, and whether or not you see it as something to look forward to, or is it just one more thing on your to-do list? So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions, some things that I really want you to ponder. And if you have an opinion about it, then give us a call. So first of all, is your date always the same thing? I mean, the whole idea is to reconnect, but if you do the same thing every time you go out on a date night, that could become a little routine and a little boring. It can make it feel more like a duty, like, all right, here we go. It's Thursday night and we're going to the same restaurant for dinner like we go to every Thursday night. Some people might find the predictability of that really good. Others might find it a drag. What's your ideal date night? And have you shared that with your spouse? If money were no object, sure, there are all kinds of things we would do. But given the confines of maybe how far you want to go, how much money you want to spend, what is your ideal date night? Who plans it? Does the same person plan it all of the time? And does it feel like a burden to do the planning? Because if so, then again, date night may feel more like a duty. And the spouse who's not doing the planning may not realize what a burden it is on the other person. So switch up. Not only does it take the burden off of one person to plan every date night, but it also allows the other spouse to use their creativity and decide on what they want to do and where they want to go. So if possible, mix it up. Take turns on who's going to plan what, or if you're staying home and watching movies like we sometimes do, I'll pick one, then he picks one. Go back and forth. Make it exciting and make sure everybody's opinion is counted for. And are your date nights on a schedule or are they spontaneous? And which would you prefer? Would you like them to be scheduled so that you make sure you always have that space reserved and nothing else gets in the way? Or would you rather just do it when you feel it? If you feel like going out, okay, let's go out. If you feel like having a dance night at home, let's light the candles, turn the music on, have a dance night at home, whatever it is that you choose to do. But those are some things to think about, and they will help with making sure the date night feels like a date and not like a duty. So if you and your spouse don't have regular date nights, I have a few things to share with you that might help change your mind. If you don't see the need in it, there are a few things that the researchers and experts say work. One is when you stop dating your partner, you leave the door open to a lack of connection. So it's important to have date nights so that you will have connection. The whole point of a regular date with your partner is the connection. It's one of the 3 R's, reconnect. So it's talking, it's getting back to who you were before life got too busy. Sometimes it's good to just be playful. When's the last time you and your spouse laughed together? And not laughing at something that occurred, but laughing with each other, having fun, being playful, being silly, maybe talking about something that you used to do back in the day, maybe trying to do that something you used to do back in the day. And now it's quite funny because you can't quite do it the way you did before. There are all kinds of ways to make sure that you connect because we have so many pressures on us. The financial pressures, the upkeep of the house and the cars. If you still have children at home, taking care of them, or even depending, your children might be out of the house, but maybe they're in college, or maybe they have a health concern. Maybe you are helping to care for aging parents. There are lots of pressures that we have on us. And so, taking time out to focus on one another is a great thing to do. One of the things that we do, again, and I throw it out, give you some ideas. So we don't live far from a very large lake. And sometimes like there's a beach area to it. And then there's also a grassy park kind of area that has, the grills and picnic tables and those types of things. But both areas are lake facing. So sometimes when the weather is nice, we will grab some folding chairs, we'll grab some snacks and a cooler, maybe some books. And of course, we always have our music on our phones. And so we'll go and put the chairs up in the grassy area and we'll watch as the kayaks and motorboats and jet skis and stuff go by. I like being around water. Looking at water is a happy place for me. So we go by the water. One of us might be reading, the other might be listening to music. We might listen to the music together. Sometimes you hear a song and we remember what was going on the first time we heard it. So we're not always talking to one another while we're there, but we're together and we're sharing the same vibe. It's that same relaxed feeling, under the shade of a tree, reading a book or watching the boats go by. So when you think about dating, don't think that it always has to be something that is major. You can have a date in your living room, in your bedroom, at the park, whatever the case might be, but you have to nourish the friendship. We sometimes give our friends an incredible amount of time and we talk about the details of our day. We even give grace to them when they do things that we don't agree with, if there's a misunderstanding, and that's all well and good. But do you do the same with your spouse? Do you talk about the details of your day and share some of the things that maybe have been disappointing, but still yielding grace? Another reason why it's important for date nights. Husbands and wives who had regular date nights reported better communication, more commitment, and greater sexual satisfaction. So, for example, 68% of wives and 67% of husbands who had regular date nights, excuse me, were very happy with their sexual relationship, compared to 47% of wives and 47% of husbands who did not have regular date nights. They were not as sexually satisfied. Now, of course, there are other factors that go into that, absolutely. But let's do all that we can to help make things work. And depending on the ages. Now, we've talked about menopause, and we will again, I'm sure, at some point in time. But remember, starting in mid to late 30s and for the rest of our lives, women start entering perimenopause and menopause. And there are periods in there where sex is not as satisfying for us. It's not necessarily top of mind for us. And so we may not we may not necessarily think about it. We need that little extra to help us think about it and have a satisfying sexual relationship with our spouses. So the regular date nights, they don't have to have anything to do with sex at all. But like I said, they get the feel good hormones in your body going. And who knows, it could just increase the chances. So those are some of the things we have to think about. Reason number 3. In a 2022 survey, spouses who had frequent date nights were significantly more likely to report that divorce was not at all likely for them. Doesn't mean they were not having issues and challenges. They just knew divorce was not an option in their marriage compared to those who do not go out on date nights or do so only infrequently. They didn't take divorce off the table. So again, that connecting, that bonding, it helps to strengthen the more that you can go out. It was dates that got you interested in that person in the first place. It was dates that helped you form the bond and decide this is who I want to do life with. So in order to keep that going, it's that muscle, you got to keep working out. You want to keep the muscles, you keep working out. If you want to keep the healthy, happy relationship, then it's important that you keep the dating going as well, because as I said, once you get married, you have to do the same things to keep them that you did to get them in the first place. So wives and husbands in the frequent date night group, they were about 14% points more likely to report that divorce was not at all likely in the future. So think about it. When was the last time you went on a date night, and what was it? How satisfying was it? Where did you go? What were some of the best date nights you had? And let's repeat some of that process. Hopefully, date night is something that's a joy and that you look forward to, and not something that you see as a duty. Hopefully it's not a chore, one more thing to cross off of the to-do list, because then um, it's not reaching the purpose that it's intended. So let's talk about some expert tips to help improve date nights. So if date night isn't something that you're doing on a regular basis, or something you haven't done in a while, or maybe you and your spouse are not on the best terms and you want to jumpstart things again, maybe you do date nights, but you say, okay, I'm open to hearing something that I could do a little differently. Here are some tips for you. So we'll talk about the tips. About 8 different things that I want to share with you, and maybe have a pen and some paper handy. Who knows? I might say something that moves you, that resonates with you, and you might want to write it down so that you don't forget. None of these things are major. I mean, they're things that you're probably already doing, but just in case. So one tip that the experts say is choose a day and time that works for both of you, and maybe make it a recurring day and time. That's kind of like the obvious. That's baseline. If you want to keep it scheduled, then you can definitely say, this is the day and time we're going to do it every week, every other week, every month, but find some time that works for both of you. Or, as I was saying before, go back and forth. So maybe if it's my turn, I pick the day and time as well as the activity. And if it's your turn, you pick the day and time. I have another text. Someone says, we love date night. Cool. We don't do this enough because we have small children. So we certainly enjoy our time alone when we can. And that's from Raynell. Thank you so much, Raynell. I'm going to talk a little bit about that with the small children. It's in one of my tips, so just hang on, okay? But I'm glad that you do the date nights. And when you have small children, I think it's even more important, because you have so much of your energy and your time and your attention that you're focusing on them and their needs. Once your kids get older, like teenagers probably wish you would go on a date night just so you can get out of the house and leave them alone. So as kids get older and they are more self-sufficient, there are things that you just naturally do with one another. And so you may not take the time to go on date nights because you feel like we're connecting right here at home on a regular basis. We don't really need to do anything extra, and that's fine. But for parents of small children, it can be very difficult to find that time. And many times, by the time you get them to bed and then you pick up a little bit from the end of the day and you get ready for the next day, you're too tired to even think about sitting down and watching a movie or having a conversation. So, yeah, with small children, it can be very challenging. Tip number two from the experts: get a shared calendar and mark that day and time weekly or every other week. So, again, that kind of goes along with tip number one. Once you've identified when you're going to do it, put it on the calendar so you're both aware of it and you don't let that time get taken up by something else. Hold on to it. It is more important than that dental appointment that you will keep. So make sure that if you schedule time, you don't have to let people know why you're not available. You're just not available. They need to pick another day and time. Going along with that, you're going to guard this date, just as I was saying. Make sure that nothing comes up that gets in the way. The experts say you should shoot for at least twice a month. And they do recommend once a week if you can swing it, but at least twice a month. So I'm sure with everything that we do between going on formal dates versus just running errands together or getting together with other couples. There are things that we're doing to help connect all the time. There are some things that might be rituals. Now, this is not a date. I'm not saying it's a date night, but one of the rituals that we used to have, we don't do it as much together as we used to, but um, every like maybe once every other month, since it's just the two of us, once every other month, we might go to Costco and make a run. We used to do the Costco shopping together. It's a ritual. It's not a date, but it's one of the three R's, and it helps with the health of the relationship. So between your rituals and your dates, I'm sure there are quite a few things that you're doing that help you keep the time together. Now, this is what I was talking about, Raynell. If you have young children and you don't have a babysitter, talk with friends who may also be in the same situation that you're in. Maybe they've got young children. Maybe it's another family in the neighborhood. It might be someone that parent, because your kids are in school or daycare or something together. Maybe it's a couple from your church, your mosque, your synagogue, whatever the case might be. But find another family that you trust. Find a family who they do life similar to the way that you do life, and then trade off. I know we used to do that sometimes when our kids were very young. Trade off, so maybe this week I'll watch yours since you don't have a babysitter, and then 2 weeks later you watch mine because we don't have a babysitter. The kids have a good time because they've got other kids to play with. They're in a different environment, and the parents get to have a good time. So you can either let it be something where you pick them up at the end of the night or let them have a sleepover. And of course, you don't want to wear out your welcome. You might still try to find babysitters, but think about whether or not, and if you've lived in an area for a while, there probably are some people that could come to mind. But if you are new to the area and you don't know a lot of people, or at least know them to the level where you would leave your children with them for a few hours, especially in this day and age, completely understandable. If you don't know them well enough, don't take the risk. But just think about that. What could you do? And there are places now, I've never used them, though they weren't as popular when my kids were young, but some areas have sort of like those nighttime centers. Instead of daycare, they have night care. There are places where you can take your children to play in a supervised environment in the evenings so that you can go out on a date. So you might just have to be a little creative. Search for things online. Look, you might find, like in Groupon, you might find a Groupon for one of those night care centers, whatever your comfort level is, but try not to let the children be an interference for you going out on the dates. Got another text to take a look at. All right. Date night is awesome, and sometimes it's the cheaper things that are the most fun. Absolutely. A dance off, slow dancing to our favorite grooves, sitting on the deck sipping wine. I like this vibe. I love to leave my wife impromptu notes of love or poems. Sometimes I'll send her a card in my words in the mail so she gets something in the mail other than a bill. I love that. I like to do things spur of the moment too, to spice it up. Great show from Eric, known as Gibbs. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. You've got it. Again, everybody's different. You have to know what your spouse likes. But most, in my experience, most women like that kind of attention. The unexpected card, the nice words. I have found more women. This that I'm about to say is not scientific. This is Linda. I have found more women who are have the love language of words of affirmation than men. So, for instance, there are more women who tend to like to hear the niceties, the sweet things, the whispers. Not to say that men don't like that also, but to a greater extent, it often happens. Manifests itself in women. So yes, the little impromptu notes, all of those things are great. And I know we haven't done it lately. I may have to put that back on our list, but there used to be times when, yeah, we would play the music and dance. And like I said, my husband, he's big on ambiance, and I love that about him. So sometimes he might, let's say he's going to cook dinner that night. He likes to cook, and he cooks quite often. So let's say he cooks. When he serves dinner, he even goes above and beyond what I do. In all honesty, he'll cook dinner, and then he'll make sure that when he sets the table, he either turns off the lights or dim them, and there'll be candles on the table. Now, it's not, we're not talking about the candelabra and the fine china. We're talking about some nice scented candles. So there might be candles lit, music playing, even though the TV might be on as well, but we're able to sit and just have a nice, chill vibe where we can talk. And those are one of our favorite times to talk about the highs and lows. And when you talk about the highs and lows, you never know what direction it might go in. So if you're just joining us, I'm in the middle of giving out some reasons why experts say married couples need to go out on scheduled dates. And so you're listening to Relationship Conversations. I'm Dr. Linda Bing, and the first topic of the night is date nights. Is it a fun thing to do, or is it more of a chore? So far, the folks who have been checking in are saying that they love date night. And I love hearing that because, again, experts say that couples that go on date nights are more likely to be happy, more likely to be sexually satisfied, and more likely to not even consider divorce when times get tough. So keeping folks healthy is one of the reasons why I do what I do. I like talking about relationships. I believe that there's a lot, particularly in the African American community, that could be improved upon when it comes to relationships. And I'm talking about what I know about, which is why I focus on African Americans. So I do believe in having strong Black families. And the core has to start with what's the nature of the relationship between those parents, whether you're married or not. Tonight, I'm focusing primarily on married couples, but what's the foundation? What are we building on? What are your children seeing? Because chances are they're going to repeat exactly what they see. That's normal for them. So the more you can show them the love between two partners, the better off their lives will be as young children, but also when they get older and start their own relationships. So, yeah, let's make sure that we always have relationship conversations, regardless of who you're speaking with. Let's have relationship conversations and help to strengthen our families and our community. Couple more tips from the experts. Have fun planning. Yes, switch off planning every other date, like I said, and surprise one another with an evening out or an evening at home. That's great. And again, Gibbs, if I may call you that, Gibbs said that they do that sometimes. Let me go back to his text. Uh, Back in my phone here. Yeah, he said he likes to do things spur of the moment to spice things up. And I think that is wonderful. Spur of the moment is great. Little things here and there that you didn't think about or that you don't normally do. Sometimes you're just feeling good. It's been a good day. Let's just go have some fun. Or other times, maybe it hasn't been a good day. So let's go have some fun. And when you allow your partner to help with the planning, I mean, you can take turns and switch off, or you can sit down and plan together, however you choose to do it, but it should be something fun. Maybe you want to, and I'm just going off the cuff here, but maybe write some things on slips of paper, put them in a bowl, pull it out, whatever you pull out, that's what we're going to do. So, No discussion, no argument. I put in some things I like, you put in some things you like, whatever gets picked, that's what we choose to do. And you've got to go along with it. So you can't say, oh, I don't really want to do that. I don't remember how to skate. And I'm bringing that up because those are some things that we've talked about. We have not gone skating together 20 years, maybe. Um, and we've not gone bowling together. My husband likes to bowl. It's not my thing, but if we were to do what I just said and write it on slips of paper, put it into a bowl or something and pull it out. If he pulled out bowling, I would have to go, and I would go cheerfully because nobody wants to be a drag or pull it down on the date. You want to have a good time. And so you do something sometimes that maybe you would not think about, but something that your spouse would do. Back in the day, I can't think of who the author was, but there was all of that about emotional bank accounts. Remember that? It'll probably come back to me at some point who wrote the book that talked about that. But it was like you have to put things in the emotional bank account so that when you need to withdraw, you have something in there. It's like money in the bank. You can't just go to the bank and pull money if your account is empty. You have to be making deposits in order to make a withdrawal. So when you do something that maybe is not your vibe, but it's something that your spouse enjoys, you're making a deposit in that emotional bank account and your spouse sees it and they appreciate it. I'm sure he will appreciate it when I go bowling with him because he recognizes this is not her thing. But because I enjoy it, she's going to do this. So, yeah, whenever possible, make those deposits into that emotional bank account. Number 7 of 8 is be creative. And remember, it's not about the cost, it's not about the location, it's about the connection. Now, when I say it's not about the cost, again, this is how I'm interpreting what the experts are saying. They're not saying that, the sky's the limit. They're saying that you don't have to spend money. Go out and get some ice cream. On a nice summer night, go get some ice cream. Sit outside and eat your ice cream while you talk. That should bring back good memories. Ice cream is one of those things that it takes you back to childhood and fun and those kinds of things. Play games like you used to play. Maybe you can get your spouse to ride a bike with you, throw a ball around, jump rope, go play tennis, whatever the case might be. But do the things that brought you joy when you were a child. It's not about the cost, it's about the connection. And then the last tip is to use websites like Groupon, Living Social, Gold Star, because those give you good cost saving ideas. So I don't always think about Groupon. I have friends that talk about it, but the few times that it will come to mind and I look, there are some really good deals out there. And sometimes it's something that I may not have ever done before. It might be something that I've never even really thought about. But once I see it, it's like, okay, that might be all right. And the price is right. So let me go ahead and try it. I haven't done that for a date night yet. I mean, I've done it for personal things for myself, self-care kinds of things. But there are activities on there. And so you can go into Groupon and put in what you're looking for, search on that basis, and then it will give you back information that you can use. Gold Star is good for finding inexpensive or at least reduced prices to plays and things like that. It's like a ticket master, discounted ticket master. So again, concerts and plays are quite expensive these days. I remember when going to the movies was an inexpensive date. It's not inexpensive anymore. So if you could find some tickets to a good show, maybe you guys don't do theater often. Maybe you don't do concerts. I know it seems like the older we get, the less of those things that we do, but go back to it. And even if your taste in music has changed from back in the day, find a concert. There are concerts for all kinds of genres of music, and not all concerts are paid. I know here where I live in the summer, there are different cities and counties that will have music series, outdoor concerts, no charge. Go sit and listen to the music, those kinds of things. That makes a good date, especially when it's in the evening, stars come out, have some refreshment, sit there with a nice cold beverage of your choice, and you're listening to good music with your honey. That's a good thing to do. So we need to get back into doing some of these things. So that does it for our first hour. That wraps up our conversation about is it date night or duty night. And I think I've given you enough information to get your date on and get back into the dating game. Go out and get your date on. Make it even better. If it's something that you're already doing, try something new. Maybe there was something that you heard either in my comments or the people who texted, and start connecting. And remember that friendship should come first. You're trying to find that friend again. Don't go out with your wife or your husband. Go out with your friend. Go out with that person who makes you smile. Go out with that person that you could not wait to talk to on the telephone at the end of the day. Go back to that person that you couldn't wait to see their smile. That's what we're trying to do. And date night helps you do all of that. So we are ready for our next break. And when we come back, we're going to shift a little bit and we're going to talk about what are some of the little things that turn into big arguments and how to avoid that. And I will say, if you were doing more date nights, putting those deposits into the bank, you might have fewer arguments over the little things. So this is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSEN, and we'll be right back.
What's up, Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh's DSEN listeners? It's Monday. Let's start the week off right. We have that soulful music to help you. Yes, we have all the soulful sounds, and we hope that you're enjoying it. If so, send us a text at 412-218-3888 to let us know. We're wishing everyone a safe, productive, and fun week. And of course, keep our sounds on and let someone know about us. We are Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Looking for a cost-effective way to help increase your company's bottom line? Look no further than Soul Pit Media. With our award-winning print, internet, podcast, and Soul Pit television options, we can help your business get to that next level. For more information, contact Craig Dawson at 412-407-7685. That's 412-407-7685. And let Soul Pit Media take you to that next level.
Business owners thinking about back-to-school promotions and replacing summer flavors with pumpkin? What about your taxes? Reduce your stress and tax liabilities by planning for tax time now with Cameron Professional Services Group. CPSG takes your goals, values, and visions to create a custom tax plan catered specifically to your business. We work closely with you to ensure that as your business grows and goals shift, so will your custom plan. Located in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, PA, CPSG is a CPA and consultant firm, providing services in accounting, auditing, tax planning and preparation, community development, and operational management. Call Cameron Professional Services Group today at 412-251-0607.
Have you had the Beat by Niche experience? Beat by Niche is one of the top makeup artists in the city of Pittsburgh. She's touched the face of Cardi B, Love and Hip Hop personalities, and various Steeler wives. If you have not sat in her chair, what are you waiting for? Visit beatbyniche.com to schedule your special makeover for all occasions: weddings, graduations, proms, photo ops, and more. Visit beatbyniche.com and experience the touch of excellence.
Making love with you is all I want.
Welcome back. Welcome back. I've been waiting for you. I'm looking forward to going into our second half of the show. Minnie Riperton taking us in there, a little old school music. I love it. I love it. So, those of you who talked about dancing and so forth, go old school. Go back to the music that we loved and enjoyed, okay? If you're just joining, this is Relationship Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Bing. And in our first hour, we talked about date night and the importance of married couples dating. I'm going to shift a little bit, and we're going to spend this next hour talking about the little things that turn into big arguments. Now, if not done right, date night could turn into an argument. You can argue over how often we go, how much we spend, where do we go, who does the planning. We don't want that to happen. So let's talk about first, what are some of those little things? And then we'll move into talking about how you can avoid the arguments. So just see if any of these sound familiar to you. He chews too loud. He doesn't load the dishwasher right. She spends money like it grows on trees. She is late for everything. Why can't he put the top on the toothpaste? I wish she would stop making plans for us without checking with me first. Make a decision. The proper way to fold a towel is this: stop leaving the toilet seat up. The right way to hang toilet paper is it over or under? Any of those things sound familiar? Many of them are heard on a regular basis in households all across America. And so, if you're familiar with them, you are not alone. Those are some of the little things. Now, how important is that at the end of the day? Yet, there are couples that, yes, they have arguments over toilet paper, toothpaste caps, how you fold towels, etc. These are some of the most common things that turn into arguments. But the argument on that level is not about the dishwasher and how it's loaded or how the towel is being folded. None of those things. They are trivial fights that often symbolize some unspoken underlying issues regarding power, control, intimacy, fear of abandonment. Maybe some other things as well, but that's what we need to get into. Let's pull back the layer because nobody gets that upset over a toilet seat being left up. Nobody gets that upset over the fact that you didn't fold the towels the way I did or that you're chewing too loud. That is an indicator of something else. So, on the surface, these arguments seem pretty silly. Yet, when people don't resolve the argument, whether it's a big argument or a small one, whether it's a big thing or a little thing, they can ruin a relationship. And I'll help you understand how these disagreements can devolve so that you can stop bickering, stop having the arguments like some old unhappy couple and have more productive conversations. Again, I go back to when you are putting deposits into that emotional bank account, doing those special little things that put a smile on the other person's face. Even sometimes, I was reading my devotional just the other day. I don't think it was this morning, but it was talking about the example of falling on the sword. Even when you're in a disagreement and it might not be your fault, sometimes you being the one who says, you know what, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Even when you're right. The devotional talked about the fact that that goes a long way to build goodwill and good relationships. So those deposits are crucial. And that way, when you're putting those deposits in and your spouse does one of those annoying little things, you are more likely to give them grace. So let's just remember that. Sometimes we have to give grace and not let these little things bother us, but it's so much easier if you made an emotional deposit. So, contrary to what people tend to think, we don't argue about little things. The little thing is what's on the surface. We argue about things that we believe are important for some reason or another. And one of the things you do not want to do is say to your spouse, why are you getting so upset over such a little thing? Because now you've just added gas to that fire. So what's small to one person may not be small to the other person. If you say something like that, you have just minimized them, diminished their whole framework around that. So let's talk about some of the underlying causes, the things that really have us upset that just get triggered by those seemingly little things. One is unmet needs and security. Often, when we have these fights over what seems like something small, the person is might be feeling unappreciated, ignored, disrespected. Something is causing them to feel insecure in the relationship. Something is causing them to feel like there's on shaky ground, or they're walking on eggshells, or maybe they have a need that, just to be recognized. It doesn't have to be something big, but to be validated. And that's one of the reasons why you never say, that's such a small thing, because now you're adding to, they're already feeling perhaps ignored, disrespected, unappreciated, devalued, all of those things. And so now you're making it worse by saying that this is such a small thing, let it go. So, how do you make your spouse feel appreciated? It's something to really think about. It's not something that I think we take time to think about, but it's something that we should. What are the things that I could do to make him feel appreciated? We tend to think that people are just acting in their roles. He mows the lawn because that's what the man of the house does. Or, she does the laundry because that's what a wife should do. Even if that's the case, when's the last time you thanked them for operating in their role? Because do you know how many men and women out there, how many husbands and wives are not doing the things that they should be doing based on the marital agreement? So be thankful for the fact that you have a spouse who is. And when you see them doing something that you appreciate, thank them for it. In my house, I tend to be I'm the one that washes the dishes. And so, and I wash them by hand. We don't put them in a dishwasher. Again, it's just the two of us. So in order to get the dishwasher full, I don't like to run it when it's not full. In order to get the dishwasher full, it can take 4 days before we get enough dishes to be in there. So I wash them. But if he washes something that was in the sink, I usually thank him. It doesn't matter. I try not to don't get in that mindset of, well, you ate out of the bowl, you ought to wash the bowl. No, washing dishes is what I do. You took the time to wash the dishes. Thank you, babe. I appreciate that. It goes a long way. It really does. So think about what their love language is and how you can make them feel appreciated in it. Now, if you're not familiar with love languages, go back and check either on our website, pghdscn.com, or go to the YouTube channel, Pittsburgh DSCN. Find the show that I did on love languages and listen, because it's really important that you interact with your spouse in the language that they understand. You could be doing a bazillion things for them, but if you're not doing the things that signal love for them, then it's a waste of time and you're not getting the desired result. So you might feel like no matter what I do, she's never satisfied. And it's not that she's never satisfied, it's that you're not doing the things to satisfy her. If she asked you for a sandwich, and instead of giving her a sandwich, you wash the dishes, wash the car, um, bought some groceries. All of those are great things, but she's still hungry. You have not met her need. And many times when needs are unmet, that's when we see people argue over these little things. So, do you ever feel ignored or disrespected? And do you make those feelings known? You don't want to blame the other person, but they don't know necessarily how it made you feel. So anger and resentment are both expressions of unmet needs. If somebody is angry or they're feeling resentful, somewhere in the mix, they are desiring something that you're not doing. So when we fight about something that seems insignificant, there's an unexpressed uh, need beneath all of that. And you have the responsibility to let somebody know when your needs aren't being met. It's not their responsibility to know what you need and to provide that. You need to let them know. And even if you've told them before, well, you might need to tell them again, and that can be frustrating. I get it. I get it. But would you rather be frustrated or would you rather have your need met? So when you talk to them about it, we don't want to say things like, you made me, or you. In fact, don't start with you at all. Start with I. I feel hurt when. I would feel more appreciated if. So you always want to start with I, but make it known that you are experiencing an unmet need. And when you express those things, I know it makes you vulnerable. A lot of times people don't want to feel vulnerable in a relationship. But if you're going to be vulnerable, who better than to be vulnerable in front of than the person that you vowed to do life with? That's your mate. You guys are bonded. The two have become one. So vulnerability is okay. And so we might have internalized some of the cultural expectations that, especially women feel like, our culture often says that women have to be mild mannered and selfless, or that men have to be strong and independent. We may have been taught that having needs is selfish or weak, and this can make us afraid of imposing on others or asking for help. Don't be too proud to ask for help. Many times I see that in situations where the man feels like he's got to be strong and independent and not ask her or take advantage of the help that she offers. But again, I go back to my foundation, which is always scriptural. And when I go back, a woman was created to be your helpmeet. That's what we were put here for in terms of a husband and wife situation. So if she's your helpmate, let her help. Don't be too proud to ask for it. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. And then instead of openly communicating our needs, we argue about the truth or what your partner should know. And as I said, it's not their responsibility to know, but it is your responsibility to express it in a safe and respectful manner. So make sure that when you feel your emotions escalating, stop and ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? Because some need is not being met. It's not about the simple thing that you're about to let off steam about. What do I need in this moment? And then communicate that need to your partner, beginning with I rather than you. When you have unresolved past resentment, it gets bigger. And in fact, that is one of the other underlying causes when you have unresolved past resentment. So something that was unaddressed before becomes a frustration, and it gets bigger and bigger. And as it's moving around, it's creating an irritation, builds up over time, and it turns into issues. So many times we just want to let it go, avoid the conflict, sweep it under the rug, but that doesn't do any good. You keep sweeping under the rug, and soon enough, you got a pile big enough that everybody's tripping over every time they walk in the room. Can't just sweep it under the rug. It will not just go away on its own. And even worse, sometimes we're bringing past resentments from other relationships into the relationship. That is a whole nother show topic, but you have to make sure to unpack your bags before you go on this next trip. This trip with this person that you are connected to now, don't bring the dirty laundry from the last relationship into this relationship. And as you develop dirty laundry in this relationship, clean it as you go along. Otherwise, you're going to make bigger problems. So we trigger people, and a trigger by definition is a present event that recalls a painful past experience. If your partner uses a specific tone that mimics a critical parent or your ex or somebody that you dated previously, and maybe that person was untrustworthy, your brain is going to be triggered into that fight or flight syndrome because you go into survival mode. So, was there a specific word or a look that turned a calm conversation into this big explosive event? Those are the things we need to watch out for. Another key underlying cause, power and control. Many times we don't realize that we're being controlling. Sometimes we think, oh, I just have high standards, or oh, I just know what I like. But often it boils back down to control. Or sometimes we feel like, well, I don't tell you what to do. No, but if you withhold, and it doesn't have to be sex or money, it can be your time, your attention, your affection. If you pull back, then in order for me to get what it is that I want, I have to acquiesce and do what it is that you're asking me to do, which is a form of passive aggressive control. You may not come out and tell me what to do, but if you've created consequences for me not doing what you want me to do, then you're still controlling me. So we need to think about the power and control that goes on in relationships, because the disagreements, about how to do things, like how do you fold the towel, what's the best way to mop the floor, how do you put the toothpaste cap back on the toothpaste? All of those things frequently are about control and autonomy, and feeling that your way of doing things is the right way of doing things. No, it's right for you, but it doesn't mean that it's an absolute right. And because it's right for you, doesn't mean that it's right for your spouse. So because we want our own way, I mean, that's part of human nature. We want to be comfortable and satisfied, and that usually means doing it my way. So we want our own way, and we don't necessarily want to change because that's going to make us uncomfortable. So particularly if you get married later in life, you really have set into your own way of doing things. And it makes it more challenging when someone else comes along to do life with you. Or if one spouse moves into the other spouse's home, that can be a challenge because the spouse who was already living there, that person has things uh, positioned where they want them. They have stuff organized how they want it. They do things on a certain schedule or cadence. And so basically, the new person has to come in and abandon the way they used to do things to get along with your program, unless you're willing to make those compromises. Many times people don't say it, but they might be feeling that there's some control and you have all the power. Just some of the things to think about. So if you're someone who believes in the right way, you need to recognize that that's code for saying my way. If you talk about this is the right way to fold a towel, no, that's your way of folding the towel. We don't fold towels the same way, but I don't say anything about it because I'm just happy that you folded the towels and I don't have to do it. So you have to look for what's the bright spot in this situation. There's no right way to fold laundry or arrange the pantry or any of these other things that we tend to get so upset about. There's not a right way. There's your way and there's my way. And we need to sometimes just agree to disagree. Either I'm going to do it, unless there's something harmful or damaging about the way someone is doing it, unless it creates a major inconvenience for the other person, then just let it go. Just let it go. Is that really the hill you want to die on? I mean, everything that's going on in life, are you really going to make a big deal out of that? So as we continue, there are other things that could be the underlying thing behind these little arguments. Misplaced anger is another one. People sometimes take out their anger on the people closest to us, the people that love us and know us, because we're not as fearful of repercussions with them. So, for example, you get upset at work. Your manager made you feel some kind of way or disrespected you or dumped too much work on you instead of giving some to somebody else. Whatever it was, you're really upset with the manager. Or maybe there was so much traffic, it took you twice as long to get home. Or maybe somebody cut you off and almost made you have an accident on the way home. You've got anger and frustration built up in you. And so when you get home, that person, your spouse, does something, the little thing. We're at dinner and he's chewing too loud, whatever it might be. That is just the trigger. That's like um, the last drop in the bucket. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. And you let out all of this anger on that individual. And really, that wasn't it. A lot of people walk around really miserable. They don't necessarily like their jobs. They think that they're overworked and underpaid. They have to deal with horrible commutes. Maybe the kids don't act right. Um, they're not feeling healthy or happy. They don't think they're walking in their purpose. We carry so much stuff that there are some people that are just angry all the time. I'm not saying that that's you, but if it is you, you have to learn how to release that anger and frustration in an appropriate and healthy way, which does not mean letting it out on the family members. So because we don't want repercussions or because you couldn't say anything to the person who cut you off. They cut you off and they're gone. They're home and happy while you're miserable carrying that home to your loved ones. So instead of walking into peace, you're walking in, bringing all of this anger and frustration with you. The people who are at home want peace to walk through the door, and you want to walk into peace. So the person who made it home first and is sitting there waiting for you needs to create a peaceful environment for you as well. Sometimes I text my husband while he's at work, and I sometimes ask him, what do you want to come into? Would you rather have television on so we can catch the news together? Do you want some soft music and candles? I'll give him two or three choices. What environment would you like to walk into? Because I have no idea what his day was like. He might want something upbeat. It could be Friday and he's so happy to be off the job and be ready for the weekend. He might feel like coming in and dancing. Okay, then let's do that. Or he might feel as if it's been a rough week. Friday traffic is worse than any other traffic. I know when I get home, I'm going to need a nap. So the quieter, the better. It's just a simple thing that you can do to help maintain peace. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I'm not saying that I do everything the right way or that everything is copacetic in my marriage. No, we are human. We have our challenges as well. But if there's something that I can share, either based on experience or based on the book knowledge that I have, then yeah, I'm going to do that for you because that's why I'm here to help you with relationships. Whew, okay, let me see. I got another one here. Okay, I'll do that a little bit later. Attachment fear. That's the last one on this list is attachment fear. So that means a partner's failure to do a little thing can trigger fears of abandonment or thoughts that the other person does not care. And that's usually coming from something traumatic that happened in the past, whether it was something that happened as a child or something that happened in a previous relationship. It could mean that, maybe this is the quintessential example is the dad who the parents split up, the dad moves out, the dad always promises to come by and spend time with the child and take them places and never shows up. That child could be dealing with abandonment issues, and so something that you do might trigger that. And of course, in your mind you might be thinking, yeah, but I've never done anything or given any indication. Well, you don't know what might trigger that for them. It just you saying you're going to be home at a certain time, and even though by no fault of your own you not being home at that time could trigger it because you didn't show up when you said you were going to show up. It brings that feeling back up. Or maybe we had plans to do something and you decided that you couldn't for whatever reason. Might be a legitimate reason, but it could still trigger something in someone. So attachment fear, often related to something from childhood. So let me refresh. I was telling you some key underlying reasons, in case you're just joining, because I wanted us to understand that when we are fighting over the seemingly little things that someone does or does not do the way we'd like them to be done around the house, it might be due to unmet needs and insecurity, unresolved past resentment, power and control issues. It might be due to misplaced anger or attachment fear. So we're going to break shortly, but before we do, I'm going to cover a little bit more information for you. So, wondering how you argue over stupid stuff and taking the argument a little too far, it has a lot to do with the process of how you and your partner communicate, and very little to do with the content of what you're actually talking about. I'm here for you if you want to call, text, get some free advice. You can call me at 412-213-8995 or text me at 218-3888. So content versus process, that's an important distinction to make because I think we can all agree that arguing over what someone might call the stupid stuff or the little things, like some of the things I mentioned repeatedly, the dishes, the towels, all those kinds of things, um, it builds this emotional distress that gets shared. And it may seem like it fits, but it doesn't, because constantly feeling criticized or misunderstood or invalidated or belittled, all of those toxic emotions erode at your security. You don't feel safe in the relationship. So even though your partner may feel like, what did I do to make you feel unsafe? If you're not being honest, if you're using words that put me down and belittle me, if your attitude is always angry, if I don't feel validated or appreciated, all of that is toxic and it wears things away. So it's not what you say when we get into this blow up, it's that whatever it was added to those feelings. And so that's what we're talking about, process, not content. It's not the toilet paper was put on the roll the wrong way. It's you're making me feel stupid for the way I put the toilet paper on. And that just adds to all the other things that have been problematic between us. So that's what the content versus process means. And so focusing on the pattern can help you stop arguing over the little stuff. When you notice that you and your partner are escalating in an argument over something small, it's important to take a step back and see if you can recognize anything familiar about that scenario, not the issue itself, but what's happening emotionally in your communication. So here are a few bullet points to think about. How are you feeling? Okay, it's escalating. What is this doing to me? How's it making me feel? How's my partner likely feeling? What do you notice about your own inner experience? And what story do you tell yourself? Many times these things happen because of the stories we tell ourselves. And the stories can be based on those past experiences. So like I said, if your spouse is late coming in, they're coming in a lot later than they said they would, and what you're telling yourself, the story in your head is, this person is not going to show up. This person is going to disappoint me. This person is not going to be available to do what I need them to do, just like my dad wasn't there for me either. That's the story you're making up. Or somebody might exhibit a behavior that reminds you of a past relationship. You're making up a story in your head and you're acting more off of the story than you off of the reality. So you're reacting to what's going on, and we don't want to react, we want to respond. So if you find that you and your partner tend to argue over small things, you most likely are reacting instead of responding. Neither of you are communicating in a way that can help to de escalate the situation and meet the other person's need. Reactive emotions are more about defending and protecting than they are about comforting and securing. So when you are reacting, you put the walls up and nobody can get through. But when you're responding, the wall's not up. You're just either asking the right questions to get to the root of the problem, or you're being comforting, you're making the other person feel secure. Unfortunately, couples who argue over little things tend to be great at sharing these types of emotions, but very poor at sharing and responding to others. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes while we break. And while we're gone, just think about some of that. When is the last time you argued over a little thing, and try to see if you can get to what was really going on inside your head? And then we'll come back for more relationship conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. You are listening to Pittsburgh's DSCN. Be right back.
Pittsburgh. It's an old school party. Yes, each Saturday we throw it back with some of the best old school music, funk, R&B, old school, rap, hip hop, and all the jams that make you move and dance. Yes, check it out. Each Saturday right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN. All the old school jams, 6 to 11 p.m.
Pittsburgh, have you seen our Sunday radio schedule? Ooh, it is lit. Start the day off with our Sunday gospel music from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It will inspire you and have you praising the Lord. And from 3 to 8 p.m., we bring you Sunday jazz melody for all the jazz lovers. Then cap off the night with The Quiet Storm from 8 to 11 p.m. to hear the best smooth, romantic, and soulful R&B sounds of yesterday and today. All that each Sunday on Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Looking for a cost-effective way to help increase your company's bottom line? Look no further than Soul Pit Media. With our award-winning print, internet, podcast, and Soul Pit television options, we can help your business get to that next level. For more information, contact Craig Dawson at 412-407-7685. That's 412-407-7685. And let Soul Pit Media take you to that next level.
Business owners thinking about back-to-school promotions and replacing summer flavors with pumpkin? What about your taxes? Reduce your stress and tax liabilities by planning for tax time now with Cameron Professional Services Group. CPSG takes your goals, values, and visions to create a custom tax plan catered specifically to your business. We work closely with you to ensure that as your business grows and goals shift, so will your custom plan. Located in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, PA, CPSG is a CPA and consultant firm, providing services in accounting, auditing, tax planning and preparation, community development, and operational management. Call Cameron Professional Services Group today at 412-251-0607.
Have you had the Beat by Niche experience? Beat by Niche is one of the top makeup artists in the city of Pittsburgh. She's touched the face of Cardi B, Love and Hip Hop personalities, and various Steeler wives. If you have not sat in her chair, what are you waiting for? Visit beatbyniche.com to schedule your special makeover for all occasions: weddings, graduations, proms, photo ops, and more. Visit beatbyniche.com and experience the touch of excellence.
Welcome back, family. This is Relationship Conversations. I'm Dr. Linda B., and you're listening to Pittsburgh's DSEN. Before the break, we were talking about some of the little things that couples argue over and the underlying causes associated with those things. Now I want to turn the conversation to be a little bit more positive. I always want to leave you on a good note. So let's talk about some of the things you can do to minimize that. And then at the end, right before I sign off, I'm going to tell you about some of the other great things that are happening on DSEN, Pittsburgh's DSEN, so that you can make sure you keep it locked and you listen at the right times. Also, if you enjoy the programming that you're getting from Pittsburgh's DSEN, then please tell a friend. Tell a friend, tell a family member, tell somebody. Have them listen in as well and help our listenership grow. The more of you who listen and interact, then the longer we'll be here doing what we do. All right, so let's get back to the content. If you're just joining, as I said, we were talking about the little things that create big arguments. So for the person who gets angry or annoyed, here are some things to think about. Be mindful about when you are starting to get annoyed and pause and regroup. So when that feeling starts to bubble up and you recognize that your emotions are changing, your state of mind is changing, you need to stop at that point, breathe, regroup, think different thoughts, set a goal perhaps for how you want to feel, how you want the conversation to end so that you can come out from under those feelings. Figure out why this thing is bothering you so much. Is it reminding you of something? Are you making up a story inside your head? Is there some subliminal message that you think the person is sending you? Do you think that they're using this as a cover for what they really feel? Well, if that's a thought in your mind, then ask them. Use the sandwich method. That means you tell them something good, then you talk about what you want to change, and then you end with something good. So you're sandwiching the comment that could be perceived as negative in between two good things. And remember, that comment that goes in the middle begins with I statements. You don't start out by talking about you did this, you made me feel. No, I am feeling, I am desiring, and you take the ownership of what's going on inside your body. Be mindful of your tone. That is so important. Many times when we get excited about something, our voices escalate. You don't even have to be angry sometimes. You're just excited. You get emotional. And some of us are more emotional than others. So when you get emotional, maybe your voice level rises, or maybe the tone of your voice gets higher. You don't want people to think that you're being argumentative. When you're having difficult conversations, you want to be as calm as possible. So just watch your tone. Own your own feelings. Like I said, no one can make you feel anything without your permission. They have no control over what you're thinking or feeling. So don't say, you make me. It's all about you. You have a choice. You have a choice. That's something that we really don't recognize, and we don't act on it enough. We choose, to feel what we feel because of the stories that are going on inside our heads. You don't have to be upset over what someone is saying. Think about it. When you're out and about, you could care less what the cashier might have to say or has to think. That person has no impact on you, no consequence whatsoever. Now, I realize that with somebody you're close to, it's a different type of relationship, but the same way you can choose not to be upset by what that cashier or some person that's insignificant to you, same way you don't get upset over what they said, you can choose not to get upset over what your spouse is saying. It takes practice, and it's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but it can be done. Notice the stories that your mind is weaving about what these feelings mean, and then disbelieve them. Mindset is everything. Mindset is everything. So you have to have the right mindset. And when these stories pop up, when these negative thoughts come to mind, just dismiss them, get rid of them, replace it with something positive. When you're feeling um, upset because of something that they did not do, then try to think about all the good things they did. Whatever you focus on tends to grow. And somebody could be doing 90% of the things right, and 10% could be the way you don't want them done. I don't really want to say wrong because it's not necessarily wrong, only in your mind it's wrong. But that 10% is what you focus on. And so it grows and it takes over. And it really is not that important in the overall scheme of things. So we have to put things into the proper perspective and recognize what you're doing to annoy yourself. And a lot of times your reaction can be something that annoys you just as much as what the other person is doing. Now, if you're the person who's getting the complaint, you're the person that they are annoyed at, take what they're asking you to do seriously. It might seem small to you. Like, what's the big deal if I don't put the cap back on the toothpaste? And that's a legitimate question. What's the big deal? However, is it that difficult if you do? If putting the cap back on the toothpaste, or putting your dirty clothes in the hamper, or not leaving dishes in the sink overnight, or whatever the ask is, take it seriously and do what you can to get beyond that, because you don't want to do anything that's going to create ill will or bad feelings or an argument in the other person. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the one giving up all the time, or I know some people talk about not wanting to be a doormat. You're not doing any of that. You are making an emotional deposit into the emotional bank account, and you can withdraw against that later. Don't tell your partner that they get mad about the littlest things. That's only adding fuel to the fire. So don't even go there. Don't minimize what they're feeling or minimize the situation. Again, you have no idea what it might be signaling to them. What is the underlying cause? Some of the little things that, when you leave a mess, sometimes it represents a lack of respect, or feeling that your partner is your parent. Your parent, not your peer. You know how sometimes in corporate break rooms, they'll have a little sign, like if the break room has dishes and maybe there's a dishwasher and a sink and stuff there, somebody in management usually puts up a sign that will say, your mother doesn't work here, clean up after yourself, that kind of thing. It's the same thing at home. If you're leaving a mess, you spilled something and you don't wipe it up. There are crumbs on the counter, you don't clean them off. You leave your dirty clothes on the floor. Those kinds of things can signal a lack of respect, or feeling like you think that I'm your partner. I mean, I'm your parent and I'm supposed to be picking up after you all the time. Sometimes being late, represents that the other person's time is not valued. There are other things that they could be doing. I know sometimes back in the day, there were maybe 3 or 4 girlfriends. We used to hang out and do things together. And there's one who, she was always late. And I'm not talking 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, we might be waiting 45 minutes to an hour. I would usually want to leave, but People are waiting and calling, and where are you? And what's going on? When someone does that, when they're late all the time and they're having other people wait on them, what they're saying indirectly is that what they had to do is more important than you or what you might have had to do. If you tell somebody, I need another 30 minutes, then maybe they can go off and do something in that 30 minutes so that they feel like their time is being well spent instead of sitting and waiting. And so many times men will talk about how long it takes a woman to get ready. Uh, we got a lot more to do than you do, but that woman needs to be respectful of the time. And so, you know, 5, 10, 15 minutes, in my opinion, may not be his opinion. In my opinion, not really a big deal unless where you're going has an absolute start time. You don't want to get there 15 minutes late. But clearly, don't take 30 minutes, an hour, those kinds of things. And if you know you're not going to be ready, then say so that they're not tripping over the fact that you're late. When you have financial disputes often represent uh, how you feel about security or freedom. One person may feel like if they are constantly trying to pick up the slack because you're overspending, they might feel some kind of way about the fact that the money that they had earmarked for something else now has to go to repair the damage that you did. And the person who is spending, if the spouse is putting too many controls, then the person who is spending might feel like they've lost autonomy. Like, I can't, I'm working hard for money, but I can't spend it the way I want to. So it's important to be on the same page with finances, have a budget perhaps. One of the things that we do in our household, and like I said, we're not perfect, but it works for us. We have a dollar amount that each one of us, I mean, you can spend up to that dollar amount, but if you want to spend more than that, you're not asking for permission, but you're letting the person know, hey, I saw this thing, it cost this amount of money. You have a problem if I buy it. I'm thinking about getting it, whatever the case might be, because maybe there's something coming down the road that you forgot about. Maybe, oh, it's almost tax time. We're going to have to pay some taxes. Or, we need new tires on the car. Do you really want to do that right now? It's a courtesy. And so people feel disrespected. They feel insecure, like the ground under me is shaky kind of thing because you're messing with the foundation. And then different ways of doing things like the chores. I mean, that represents a power struggle or a need for order and control. Some people have more of a need for order than the others. It's not necessarily that they're trying to be controlling, but there are people who, unless life is predictable, it makes them all out of sorts and feel chaotic. Sometimes it is about control of you, not control of them, but just try to understand what the little things represent. So as time progresses, if you are the person who was angry or annoyed, look for progress, not perfection. Are they attempting to do it differently? Do I have to remind them every day or maybe just a couple of times a week? Well, I still have to remind them, yes, it's not perfect, but there's progress being made because I don't have to remind them every day. And affirm them when they do it, appreciate them. The thank yous. Hey, babe, I noticed that you've been picking up after yourself, and I really appreciate it. It lightens my load. Thank you. It lets them know that you're seeing them, that you're seeing the efforts they're making to do the things you ask them to do. And the best way to get them to make that change and to do more of it is to affirm them when they do it, as opposed to complaining to them when they don't. So instead of preaching don't sweat the small stuff, that's not what we're talking about here. I'm not saying don't sweat the small stuff. I'm just trying to give you some tips that may help you navigate things a little bit better, make it a little bit easier on everybody. So here are a few key things to remember, whether you are the one that's annoyed or the one that's being annoying to the other person. Help others always. If the other person that we're arguing with starts to get too emotional, then slow things down. If you notice that they're getting escalated, slow things down and take a break. Take a break, cool off for 20 minutes. Now, sometimes what happens is one person wants to keep talking until we get it resolved. The other person is like, nope, I need a break. Let's stop. Well, you can't both have your own way, but if the person who wants to keep talking just keeps going and going and going, you're not having a positive effect because that other person is on overload and they're not emotionally ready to hear what it is that you're saying. So the best thing to do is say, okay, let's take a break and you set the limit. Is it going to be 15 minutes? Is it going to be until after dinner? Is it going to be until tomorrow? What is the time going to be? But let's take a break and then we'll come back and revisit this so that we're still going to talk about it, just maybe not right now. Now, one of the things that the experts say is to apply what they call the 20-minute rule. When you feel like your heart rate is rising or your jaw's getting tight and you're ready to be in that fight mode, then take a 20-minute break and come back. And I'm saying maybe it's not 20 minutes, but whatever the timing happens to be, take a break. Another thing the experts say to remember is to understand the context of the little thing. It seems insignificant, and maybe we don't understand the context. We don't understand why that is so important to you. So maybe that's a conversation to have. Babe, I really want to do that. I don't understand why it has to be done that way. Maybe if you could help me understand why you need it that way, it'll make it easier for me to do it. So understand the context. You don't know where it's coming from. It might be triggering a bad memory or something, or it might be inconveniencing them in a way that you didn't even realize was happening. Acknowledging the problem that is being presented is often simple and can sometimes solve the problem without even agreeing on it. Number four is something that I've talked to you about already, using I statements. Talked to you about watching your tone. Pick your battles. Pick your battles. In the overall scheme of things, is this the hill that I want to die on? Is this big enough that we need to keep going and going and going? Maybe you just fall on your sword. Babe, I'm sorry. I didn't know that it annoyed you like that. I will try not to do that in the future. I've told you before about my uncle who used to say, you ask yourself, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because many times you can't be both at the same time. So if you want to be right, then go ahead and keep arguing, arguing, and arguing. You probably won't be happy. But if you want to be happy, babe, I'm sorry. I'll try not to do it anymore and keep it going. And then self-care. Self-care is so important. Self-care, if we're losing control of our emotions, you want to slow things down, walk away, stay away till you get regain control. Do whatever it is that you need to do to take care of yourself and preserve your sanity at that point in time. Take care of yourself. Extremely, extremely important. So if a small thing is bothering you intensely, then identify what it represents. What is it saying to you? What's the underlying reason? And discuss that. Just discuss the underlying reason, not the trigger. So don't talk about the towels, the dishes, the dirty clothes on the floor. Talk about what it triggers for you, why you're so upset. Does it make you feel disrespected? I'm sure your spouse does not intend to be disrespectful. So let them know that you feel disrespected. And since they don't want to disrespect you, now they have a better understanding, they are less likely to do it. It might be a habit. So give it some time and give them some grace. Appreciate them when they do it rather than complaining when you don't. Psychologically, this state is often an internal alarm, when you get really riled up, and it indicates that your baseline stress is too high or that there's an unaddressed deeper issue. So I've got a couple more things that I will run by you. Before I do that, I have a text from Charles, who is in Cincinnati. Charles says, I do things that I feel are unnecessary, but if she wants it, I do the small things and tell her simply, I'll do it for you. If you love her, it's worth it. Well said, Charles. I think that is so right. I'm sure there are little things that my husband does that he probably doesn't even understand why it's such a big deal. But if it'll keep the peace, if it'll make her happy, I'll do it. And that's what we do. Not we, he and I, but we as people, that's what we do for one another. When you love someone, you want them to be happy. So you do things. It might be something that is little. It might be something that you don't necessarily need it, but it makes you happy. And I've given you examples about things like that when we talked about other topics. I told you about when we talked about submission. We were talking about some of that. I told you about the woman that I know who liked to have her husband fill her car with gas. She didn't think that she should pump the gas because her dad always pumped the gas for the mom. There are all kinds of things you could say in response to that. But if putting gas in her car, which is not in the overall scheme of things, is that the hill you want to die on? If putting gas in her car puts a smile on her face, puts a deposit in her emotional bank account, makes her feel happy, you're not arguing, she feels more responsive to you, life is good. Do things to make the peace. So, Charles, I appreciate you. I'm sure she does as well, but I appreciate you for the effort that you're putting in. So just a couple of quick things. Let's see what I want to cover before we get out of here, because there's a few things I could talk about. All right, so to help you pinpoint which message your irritation is sending, try sitting with these questions. And the one that makes you feel the most defensive or exposed is usually the answer. So one is to check your stress and burnout level. If a close friend did this exact same thing right now, would I be just as annoyed, or is it only because it's them? One thing to ask yourself. And when was the last time I truly felt rested, nourished, and off the clock? That could be part of the problem. Question number two, checking for undercurrents, the unmet needs. So if they fix this one small habit tomorrow, would I actually be happy, or would I just find the next thing to be mad at? That's another thing, again, is it this thing, or is there an underlying need? If that's not going to make me happy and I've still got a whole list of things, there's an unmet need. Check your history, the old wounds. So with this, you're talking about, does this specific tone or behavior remind me of someone or something from my past? And am I reacting to what is happening right now? Or am I reacting to the 10 other times they did this in the past? If that's the case, then shame on you, because when they did something, you should have said something. You don't let it keep building and building and building. Number four is checking your boundaries. Do I feel like I have enough me time, or does this presence feel like an obligation? Something I can't escape from. And am I using this anger to create distance because I feel smothered? People inadvertently, subconsciously will sometimes do that. Create something to move you away from me just so I can have some time. So check your boundaries. And then number five is checking your internal standards. In other words, take a look in the mirror. Is the thing that's annoying me something I strictly forbid myself from doing? Like being loud, being messy, being lazy. And am I judging them because I'm being way too hard on myself lately? So if I feel like, what this is saying is, if I feel like I've been lazy lately, and what I'm seeing, and I'm not pleased with it, and now I'm seeing you be lazy, I might be extra hard on you, but I'm really mad at me because I'm being lazy. And so you have to think about that. And in fact, there's the so what test. Next time you feel a trigger, ask yourself, in 5 years, will this moment matter? Will it matter how the towels were folded, or if there were dishes in the sink, and on and on and on, and all those other things? So pick the hill that you want to die on. And most of the time, these little things that creates big arguments, that is not the thing. It's possible to get past this, but you have to practice. You have to want to get past it. Sometimes you may feel like, people say be the bigger person. I don't know if that's the term that I like, be the bigger person, but just be the one to give in. It's not about being, because what people sometimes have a hard time feeling like, well, why do I have to be the bigger person? No, you just have to be the person to be the peacemaker. Be the peacemaker. Maybe that's the way we should talk about it. Not be the bigger person, but be the peacemaker. Be the one to put a smile on their face. Be the one to keep putting deposits into the emotional bank account. And maybe that's a great time to have a date night. If you weren't with us in the first hour, we talked about date nights. We talked about the importance of married couples having one-on-one dates. Yes, it's good to do things as a family. Yes, it's good to do things with other couples or family members, people that you enjoy, but it is essential to make sure that you carve out periodically, on some regular basis, one-on-one time where the two of you can just focus without distractions on one another. You're not focusing on the kids, the household, or any obligation. You are focusing on the person sitting across the table from you, the person who is your friend, the person that you committed to do life with. And the more you can do some of that, concentrating on the person, putting those emotional deposits in the bank account with things like date night, then the less likely you will become irritated by some of these small things. And should you become irritated by some of these small things, you will be in a better position to give grace. All right. That was a lot. That was a lot, but I appreciate you hanging in there with me. That is all that we have time for in this conversation, but I want to give you some reminders. I told you there's great programming on Pittsburgh's DSEN. There's a lot coming up. Let me read it to you. Set your schedule for Soul Take, Pittsburgh's exciting sports talk show. The fellas will have the 2025 interim coach of the Penn State football team, Terry Smith, and he'll talk about Penn State football, his career, and other topics. The Penguins and their playoff chances will be discussed on the show, the Pirates and if they could compete, the Steelers, who they could look to draft, and also the Final Four for March Madness. I don't know about what's going on in your house, but it's all about March Madness in mine. NBA playoffs, MVP of the NBA. If you'd like to listen to any conversation around those things, tune in Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, if you'd like to travel, Pittsburgh's DSCN has a cruise coming up November 7th through the 14th. They're sailing to the Eastern Caribbean. So go to the website for more information and to register. Lock your cabin in. You don't have to make full payment now. Put a deposit down and pay along the way. But go to pghdsen.com. That's also where you can go to catch replays of shows. They're uploaded into SoundCloud. You can access it through the website, or you can listen on YouTube at the Pittsburgh DSEN channel. And now, coming up after my show, listen to the best of soulful music until midnight on our radio stream. So if you're on YouTube, you can switch over and listen to it all on pghdsen.com. As I sign off, family, I need to let you know that I will not be doing my show next Monday, April 6th, but I will be back the following week. So what is that? The 13th, I guess. Make sure that you come back and join me. And I won't be here, but there'll be music or something going on. So always check out Pittsburgh's DSEN, and then see you again on Monday, April 13th from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And as I leave you, as always, I ask you to keep learning, keep growing, keep loving. One love, y'all. Good night.
You've been listening to Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Continue to listen to Pittsburgh's DSEN. We're on 24/7. See our radio schedule for programming details, and please remember to subscribe to receive updated information.